Welcome to the February 20th, 2025 work session for the Rutherford County School System. First up, we have the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Mr. Stan Vaught.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, I ask you to bow your heads for a moment of silence. Thank you. First up, we have the agenda. Give me a second to look that over. Any questions or comments? Anything you need to add, Dr. Sullivan? Okay. If not, we'll move to the approval of the consent agenda. Okay. Any questions, comments? Not? First up on our speakers, we have two different people coming to speak today. First, we have Dr. Jeff McCann, who's presenting Charter School 101 training to the board.
Mr. McCann, while you're doing that, have we found out whether or not we are being evaluated by the Board of Education this year, by the state board?
We get evaluated next year.
So we're the next year cycle?
Process.
Okay. I knew that they were publicizing which districts will win, and I didn't know if we were this year or next year yet.
Looking tremendously forward to that, by the way. We'll talk about, that'll be part of my presentation.
Okay.
Just a little bit today we'll talk about briefly. Hey, here we go. Okay. Board, thank you for your time this evening. And I did want to spend a little bit of time reviewing the charter school process with you, especially since we have two new board members this year who I'm sure probably have a lot of questions, and that's what tonight is designed for. But in addition, I think it's important that we review the whole process every year. It is one of the requirements, by the way, of our evaluation that Dr. Sullivan was just mentioning. That's one of the things we're evaluated on, is whether or not we're training our governing board on our charter school process. Okay, so that's our goal tonight, is to talk about what exactly are charter schools and what is your role as a board in the authorization process. And I apologize if some of this is old hat to a lot of you, but I do think it's worth going over, I think, every year. So let's talk about what charter schools are. Get my clicker to work, but it's not going to work. Okay, so what is a charter school? Just remember, charter schools, and this is a lot of misunderstanding here. Charter schools are public schools. They're operated by independent nonprofit governing bodies. In other words, each charter school is a part of a public school system, but they're governed by their own Board of Education. Similar to the way you govern our traditional schools, they have their own Board of Education that runs their operation. But they trade, basically we say they trade that high accountability for high autonomy. In other words, we hold them highly accountable for outcomes, But they get a lot of autonomy in how they produce those outcomes, okay? And stop me if you have questions as we go along. But in Tennessee, public charter school students are measured against the same standards as traditional public schools. They have to take TCAP. They have to take all the state assessments. They get a report card grade, just like our schools do. They get TVOS scores. They get achievement test scores. They're held accountable for chronic absenteeism, just like every other public school in the state, okay? Now, local boards of education, you ensure that only those charter schools that meet the needs of their students are allowed to open initially and remain open throughout their term. Now, in Tennessee, we grant tenure terms to our approved charter schools. Some states only go 5. In Tennessee, we grant 10. That's a big decision to make at the end of that 10-year term, whether or not to renew or discontinue that charter school. And there is an interim review at the 5-year mark as well, where we review their progress. But we also look at it on a year-to-year basis, and we'll talk about that too, okay? And you're going to do this, you're going to monitor them through a rigorous authorization process, ongoing monitoring of 3 areas: academic, operational, and financial performance of those charter schools. And in the unlikely event that a charter school is not successful, they can be revoked. You can revoke a school's charter, or you can decide to renew them after 10 years. So let's talk about funding, because that's a big part of our discussion here in Rutherford County Schools with our charter schools. How are they funded? Well, 100% of the state and local funds for every student go with them to that charter school. The money follows the student, goes directly to them. They're also eligible to be reimbursed for federal funds, like funding for students with disabilities, ELL students, Title I, Title II expenditures. They can get reimbursed for those expenditures as well on a limited basis. But, and this was a tough part for us this year, in the first year of operation, their funding is based on what their predicted enrollment is going to be in that first year of operation. Now, it is adjusted by the state in October and February, and technically we can adjust that on a monthly basis ourselves if we need to, but that initial budgeted figure is based on their enrollment predictions, and that can be quite a lot of money. I think for us this year it was $11 million, I believe, that we had to allot for those charter schools based on what they predicted they would have sitting in their building. But after the initial year, the funding is based on their prior year's average daily membership, their ADM numbers. And that's what it will be next year. In addition, though, we will have to add a prediction for any new grades that they add. And both of our current charter schools are adding another grade level. So their predicted enrollment for that grade level will determine the funding just for that grade level. Other than that, the school's funding will be based on this year's ADM. So the state has identified 6 purposes for a charter school. Why do they exist? What is their purpose? What do they do? And here they are. And to be approved to start a new charter school, you have to meet at least 3 of these. We'd like them to meet all 6. And here they are. Number 1 is to improve learning for all students and close those achievement gaps. That's really why charter schools were created, was to close achievement gaps between low-performing and high-performing students. They also need to provide parents with options for their students. Number 3 is a big one. Encourage the use of different and innovative teaching methods. That's why a lot of charter schools, or that's what a lot of charter schools base their applications on, is we are going to try a different method. We're going to do something different than the traditional public schools. But they do have to measure the performance of their pupils and their faculty and ensure that their students have that opportunity to reach proficiency on those same state assessments that every other child has to take. They're also there to create new professional opportunities for teachers and to afford parents substantial, meaningful opportunities. Parent involvement is a big part of every charter school's plan, and it's a big component that we look at in their application. Let's take a minute and define some of those key terms that you need to know, that you've heard, may not know what they are. What is an authorizer? You are the authorizer. You're the local board of education that makes decisions regarding approval, renewal, and revocation of a charter school application or an agreement. The other authorizer right now is the Tennessee Public Charter School Commission. They can agree to authorize certain schools when local boards may turn them down. And the verb form of that word, authorizing, this is the process for approving an application, negotiating that contract, and really overseeing a charter school and its operations, including that decision whether or not to close them down or renew their charter at the end of 10 years. What's a governing body? Like we talked about, every charter has their own governing body, their own board to oversee their operations, okay? And then finally, what's that charter agreement? Well, that's the signed contract that we engage with any charter that we approve to operate in our district. It is a legally binding agreement. And really, we can adjust that however we need to per what we feel like our charters need to be required to do. And I just put this up there just so that you know that authorizing standards are based on state board rules, state laws that we all must follow. And like Dr. Sullivan mentioned a minute ago, authorizers are evaluated biennially on the standards by the State Board of Education. We get evaluated next year. As a part of the process for a new authorizer, they asked us to sit in as a shadow on the current application cycle, which I did back in November and December. I sat on the team that evaluated actually the State Charter Commission. So I've become very familiar with what those standards are that we get evaluated on, and they're quite extensive. So I'm really looking forward to that process next year when we go through it in September, October, and November, where we have to provide a lot of documentation to prove that we are serving as a quality authorizer over our charter schools. Yes, sir.
Just talking about evaluated at 5 years. If one of these charter schools are not performing very well, do we have to wait 5 years for them to get shut down, closed?
Great question. Technically, no, you do not. As the authorizing board, you can pull their charter really at any time. They usually take some pretty egregious violations of that charter to shut them down before the end of the review term. It doesn't happen very often, but it does happen. So yes, you can make that decision as a board. Okay.
Dr. McCann. I think it's just good for the board to know, so when we start this process, Jeff will be the one as the designee that will be doing it, I'm sure. Those are documents that we'll be asking for that are part of the things that we're required to ask for. Right. So just be aware of that, because I'm sure our first time through that, there will be lots of questions. Why are you asking for that? There are things that we're required that we have to do, but that won't be till next year.
And the evaluating team may very well reach out to you too as well with questions, and they will expect you to be a part of that whole process, especially in the end, the final review where they discuss results with us. They have asked for our board members to be a part of that as well, so just keep that in mind. And I'll give you a heads up for sure when that's coming up.
I guess if I understand this right, if the board denies one and the state approves it, we don't have any control of that school, right?
That is correct. We no longer serve as their monitoring body. The State Charter Commission would serve as their monitoring body. Although the funds will go with those students, we will lose that funding. We don't have any oversight. Okay. So what does a quality authorizer do? Well, there's 3 things for us to look at. Number 1, we have to maintain high standards for our charter schools, and we oversee them using our performance standards. And I'll talk about our performance frameworks in a minute, because if you're not aware, we do have RCS performance frameworks that guides how we monitor those charter schools and what we hold them accountable for. However, we do have to make our best effort to uphold that school autonomy and to allow them to operate in the way that they see fit, as long as they are adherent to state law and state statutes and policies, and district policies as well. In other words, we hold them accountable for their outcomes, not their processes. That's where we hold them accountable, is what they produce, what the end result is. That's where we monitor their success, not in how they get there. They have a tremendous amount of autonomy to do that. And really, we're asked specifically to minimize their administrative burden. And that's a very difficult thing for me right now, because I feel like I am I place quite a bit of burden on their administrators at both of those schools to provide me with evidence and documentation and results and things that they're doing to prove that they're following those state laws and statutes. So it's a fine line that I'm walking right now between holding them accountable and allowing them that autonomy that really they're supposed to have. But I'm going to continue to hold them accountable for whatever they have to produce to show they're in line with state law. That's one thing that they do not get a waiver from. Okay? Now, and then thirdly, we protect student and public interest. We have to hold schools accountable and ensure ethical conduct and compliance with applicable laws like we just talked about. That's our job. We have to look out for the kids that are in those schools and make sure they're utilizing public funds properly. So I talked about this a minute ago. How we hold charters accountable is through our performance framework. That document is available if you ever want to see it. It's on our website on the charter school page under performance frameworks. And we use this to measure their performance every year and say whether they are meeting the terms of their agreement or not. But there are three parts to that. There's the academic, the organizational, and the financial performance. By far, the most important part of that framework is the academic measures. Their test scores are part of our district test scores. We're held accountable for their test scores just like they are. They are a part of our testing portfolio. So it's very important that we hold them accountable to those academic measures. Okay? And I will provide you with an annual public report. That's my job, is to do that. Unfortunately, since they're in their first year of operation, we will not complete a full testing cycle until the end of this year, nor will we get an audit on their financial progress until the end of this fiscal year. So, and typically the state doesn't always get our data reported until December sometimes. So it's probably going to be December or January before you get that full annual report on our 2 operating charter schools, okay? So if you feel like you've been kind of left in the dark about how they're doing, that's really why. We base their performance on what that framework says, and we don't get that data really until the end of the year, well after their testing is completed. Okay? I will say this, that if necessary, and this should answer some of your questions, we provide notice to the charter schools when they are not compliant with applicable laws. That's sort of my job. And we give them an opportunity to cure that noncompliance prior to instituting those revocation proceedings. So we want to give them every opportunity to correct any mistakes that they are making, or any noncompliance areas. Because I'll be quite frankly, both of our current operating charter schools came from outside of Tennessee and just don't have a whole lot of familiarity with Tennessee laws. So that's been a continual process. I will say this, currently, both of our authorized charter schools are engaged in our intervention protocols. And the protocols are the things that we put in place to address areas of noncompliance. Okay? And we'll talk about that as we go. But I will say that both our charters are currently engaged in that process. So what are our 2 charter schools? The 2 schools that are authorized by this board are Springs Empire Academy, and they're located in Smyrna at the Boys and Girls Club facility. If you're not familiar with that, it's on Culbertson Street, right behind Smyrna Middle and Smyrna Primary, right across the street from Thurman Francis and right down the hill from David Urey. They rent that facility from the Boys and Girls Club during the day. And they have right now approximately 176 students serving K-5. Their predicted enrollment, however, though, and what we based our original funding numbers on, was 240. So they're a little bit below what their hoped for enrollment was. Next year, though, they are expanding to 6th grade in 25-26. And the other charter school in operation is American Classical Academy Rutherford in Laverne. They're at a really nice building in the Ingram Entertainment Complex, and serving approximately 220 students in K-5. Their predicted enrollment was a little bit higher than that, though. 340 was what they budgeted for. And you'll notice both of our schools did not hit their budgeted enrollment number, so money has been very tight, and it's caused some of their challenges in providing services as the agreement calls for, quite honestly. Yes, sir?
American Classical, they teach classical education.
They do. They do. We'll talk about that when I get to their mission.
The state objectives if they're on classical? Because the state objectives is not lined up with classical education.
Agreed, that's a great point, but charter schools do have to teach Tennessee content standards. They cannot waive that. They don't have to utilize Tennessee-approved textbooks and materials, but they do have to teach Tennessee content standards, and they're held accountable for how they perform for Tennessee content standards, and they know that. Okay? They're also expanding to 6th grade, by the way, next year. We do have one other charter school that is not authorized by us that I'm sure you're aware of. Rutherford Collegiate Prep is the one that was denied by Rutherford County Board of Education a couple years ago, and the State Charter Commission agreed to serve as their authorizer, and they approved their application. So they're operating with no oversight from us, and they're located over in the Blackman area. So the two that we are authorized, though, let's talk about what they're all about. Springs Empower Academy, basically, like their mission says, they empower students by nurturing innate curiosity, engaging parents, and promoting optimum learning by collaboratively developing a personalized learning program for each student. You might think of that as what is called a Montessori approach, where each student has their own personalized plan for learning. If you were to visit there, you would see a lot of collaborative learning going on, a lot of groups, a lot of movement, a lot of fluidity in those groups where students are working together in teams pretty much the whole day long. Okay? That's the mission of Springs Empower Academy. American Classical Academy, like Mr. Vaughn, you said, they engage in a classical education in the liberal arts and sciences with instruction in the principles of moral character and civic virtue. Civics is a big part of what they do there. And as far as classical education is concerned, they tend to focus on classical pieces of literature and classical teaching methods, quite frankly, that sort of have fallen by the wayside here in the past, or in the recent past. But their vision is to develop students into exemplary citizens that adhere to the school's 7 virtues. So again, civics and virtue are a big part of what they do. And yes, they teach the classical model of education.
So they read the classics instead of the books
They do.
deal with.
They do. We have since received 2 more applicants to open in the year 26-27. Nova Smart Academy K-8, many of you may be familiar with them already because they applied last year and were denied by this board. Submitted an amended application, were denied again, and then they submitted to the State Board of Education, who also denied their application this year. They have come back with a revised application for us to consider for them this year. And the other one is new to Rutherford County, Rocket Ship Tennessee School Number 4. Rocket Ship Public Schools right now operates 3 charter schools in Metro Nashville. They've applied to open another one in Metro and one again here. So they if approved, they would have a total of 5 in the area. Okay. I'm sorry? I'm sorry, yes, they're K-5. Thank you very much. And they plan to remain K-5. Nova Smart Academy is hoping to expand into high school at some point if they're approved. Now let's talk about each of those schools just real quick. The mission statement for Rocket Ship Public Schools says that they are focused on low-income communities, which is where they have primarily served, and to help close those opportunity gaps for those students in traditionally underserved populations and underserved areas. That's their goal, is to close those opportunity gaps for low-income students. And their intention is to locate in the Smyrna-Laverne area, which is where our 2 operating charter schools are now. And then the other one, Nova Smart Academy, their whole focus is early intervention, starting in kindergarten to prepare kids for college and career readiness. They feel like the earlier you start, the better. They want to identify gaps in learning early and close them before the students get too far in their education where they can't close those gaps anymore. Okay? So here's the timeline that you guys need to think about. that applies in the case of both our two new applicants. We've received letters of intent by the deadline of December 3rd. We received their initial applications by the deadline of February 3rd, and that's where we are in the process now. The committee you approved last month is already hard at work reviewing those applications, and we've met a couple of times already to discuss them and share our thoughts. Where you come into play is we have to make a recommendation to you so you can vote within 90 days. And we will do that. We will have a recommendation for you, but regardless of what we recommend, remember the decision, it falls on you. That's a pretty heavy burden, I realize. But you have to vote within 90 days to approve or deny, or it will automatically be approved. Okay, if we don't vote, and that deadline is May the 1st. That we'll have to vote. Now, if you were to deny both or either one of them, they can submit an amended application within 30 days. That's just what happened last year. Then we would have 60 more days to review, and then you'd vote again after that 60 days, and we provide another recommendation for the amended application. If what happens like last year and you denied the second amended application, they can then appeal to the commission, the state commission, within 10 days. And then the commission can decide whether to approve them or not. In the case of Nova Smart Academy, they did not last year. That's why they're back. Some more specific timelines for the committee. I want to draw your attention to a couple of dates. March 19th and 27th, we'll be conducting capacity interviews in this room. This is where members of their boards come and answer questions that we have for them face to face. Oftentimes you learn a whole lot more about a charter school and their intentions when you speak with them face to face rather than read their written application. I'd like to invite you to feel free to attend either one of those, and I'll send you calendar invitations with the specific times. But March 19th and 27th in the boardroom, it's a great chance for you to come learn about what these schools are all about and to hear from their leadership. Okay? And then on April 22nd, my plan at the work session of that month's board meeting is to present you with the committee's recommendation to either approve or deny, and we'll detail the strengths and concerns for each application. But our hope is you'll be ready to vote by your April 24th board meeting to approve or deny. And you can always call us a special called meeting if you'd rather do that independently, but we do have to vote by May the 1st. Okay, what questions do you have for me? That was a brief snapshot of charter schools. Yes, sir.
I guess one thing that's always bothered me about this, if some of our kids go to these charter schools and they don't perform very well, then they come back to us, these kids are going to be behind. And I don't know, I guess that's one thing that, I don't know, I'm sure y'all keep their feet in the fire, but, you know, that's something that really we got to make sure, because, boy, I tell you, it's going to be a hardship on the kids and on everybody else. Can we visit the ones that we've approved already? Are we allowed to go visit them? Will they let us?
You can. The expectation is that we give them notice, but I have found both of our charter schools to be open to us visiting anytime. I will be making their annual site visit coming up the 1st of next month for one and the 1st of the following month for the other. So, and I will provide you with some feedback or a presentation after I have done that.
One other thing that I've got, you know, everybody, all of them say that they're going to address give opportunities for lower socioeconomic kids. And, you know, I didn't fall off a turnip truck yesterday, but, you know, those folks just don't have ways to get to school. Sounds good. You know, it sounds really good, but I just wonder how we ensure that they do that, other than just talk.
We have to monitor their performance carefully, because you're right, anybody can put anything they want in an application. It sounds great that we plan on doing this, but it's up to us then to monitor their performance after that to make sure they're doing what they say.
Well, I'm glad you're doing it, because you'll do a good job.
No.
Mr. Tidwell?
A couple questions.
Yes, sir.
Novus, you said they're K through 8. Did they initially apply for K through 8, or was it K through 5?
They have a slow
kindergarten
growth
only.
model. They have a slow growth model where their initial application last year was to start with kindergarten only, then add first grade the next year, then add second, then add third, and they've upped that to start with K1, and then be K4, and then K6, and then K8.
Okay, so rather than adding one grade per year, they're going to try to
Add a couple. Mm-hmm.
And can you give us the numbers on the ACAR and Springs, the social economics, whether or not they are addressing some of those needs that they presented?
I can prepare that for you. I don't have that off the top of my head, but I will say if we're looking at economically disadvantaged kids, both of those schools are somewhere in the 25% range, which, as we were talking earlier, typically schools in our district receive Title I funds once they hit the 70% range, so they don't have quite the same numbers. They're at about 40% ELL kids, a very small percentage of special ed.
Ms. Maxwell?
Ms. Rosales?
I was just going to say that we met today for the first time with the committee, and it's a very thorough process of this going through and evaluating just so that the board can have a recommendation. And I will tell you that the people that are in part of the committee, they pick this thing very apart. I mean, they really comb through it and just have questions, and I'm learning so much new stuff that I didn't even know before. So I just want everyone to be aware of how thorough it is and educative as well. So if you're in this seat, I highly recommend that you be part of that committee because you learn a lot. It's valuable information that you gain. So thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
setting those times. And I know we're not going to meet tomorrow because of the weather, but we can always.
We'll figure that out.
Yeah, I know.
It is a great committee, very knowledgeable people on that team.
They are thorough. I was on that last year.
That's right.
And
Maxwell was.
you do learn a lot just sitting there listening to these educators. So, anybody else like to comment? Yes, Mr. Vaughn.
I guess, if I understand correctly, most of these charter schools in the state have not done very well. I know in Nashville, I think it's probably 30, and I don't know, 29 of them I think are below performance level with the state. And I guess everybody thinks they got a better idea.
Right.
Do they have to see you on the idea that
They do.
what's going to make them different?
They do. They do. And performance does vary, you're right, Mr. Vaughn, from school to school to school. Just like traditional public schools, the performance does vary. And they can, they can, the thing about rocket ship schools is they have a past history of schools that they're in operation that we can compare their performance and see how they have done in the past.
The secret to any effective school is good teachers. We've got the best here in Rutherford County. Where do they get their teachers from, basically, in special ed especially? Where do they get them from?
Well, again, they have a lot of flexibility there, and I just out of frame of reference, I will say this. Let's talk about our two charter schools we have in place right now. One of our charter schools did a great job of hiring only Tennessee certified licensed teachers. Okay, now they've had a few struggles with losing staff along the way and having to move staff around to make sure they've got coverage in every area. Our other charter school did not. They hired mainly unlicensed people, with a few licensed, mainly unlicensed people with the intentions of getting licensure waivers for them to complete their certification during the year, in the understanding that they would train them in their own methodologies and how they prefer to teach. That has been a challenge, getting waivers and permits approved in a timely manner for that particular school. So there you see two totally different approaches. One elected to only hire Tennessee licensed teachers, one did not. And you can see a difference in the two staffs.
Anything else? Thank you, Mr. McCann.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
You have my contact information. Reach out. Come in and sit down and talk to me if you need to, okay?
Can you send this to us, your presentation?
Next, we have Mr. James Evans.
Most popular person in the county today.
Yes.
Thank you. John, would you switch over to that video, please? So in front of you is the communications report for the month of January. We're going to do something a little different this week or this month because I think you guys glaze over when I just throw numbers at you. So I wanted to show some actual results that we've been getting. There are lots of numbers on this sheet. On the back side, it shows you, to put it simply, all the arrows are pointing up and we're growing tremendously from month to month. So I'm not going to go through every number, but I do want to highlight Instagram for just a second. We have had 2,100 new followers on Instagram in 1 month. That's tremendous growth. It's really, those are taking off. But I want to show you a video that the communications department produced about Smyrna High School's ribbon cutting. I know that some of you were able to attend, others could not because of other obligations, but I want to illustrate a point. John, would you play that, please? It's about 1.5 minutes, so it's not too long.
Smyrna High School cut the ribbon on its $38.42 million expansion. At more than 95,000 square feet, the two-story addition provides Smyrna High School with 38 classrooms and lab spaces, in addition to offices and a large lecture hall. The space was much needed as Smyrna High has the second largest enrollment within Rutherford County Schools and is among the top 10 in Tennessee. With the expansion, Smyrna High can serve up to 2,500 students under one roof. The building houses career and technical education programs, including cosmetology, health science, a STEM lab, criminal justice, and audio-visual production. World languages and English as a second language classes also meet in the building. Teachers and students moved into their new space in early December. This comes about 16 months after a groundbreaking ceremony in August 2023 and nearly 8 months ahead of its projected opening. Another 16,000 square feet of space was renovated during the process, including the school cafeteria. Other updates have taken place on campus, but this is the first major update to the main building since 2005. Goodwin Mills Kaywood was the project architect, and R.G. Anderson Company served as a general contractor. Thank you to the Rutherford County Board of Education, County Commission, and our state legislative delegation for making this project possible.
Okay, so my point of showing that is,
Smyrna High School.
thanks, John, is that there were a few hundred people there, maybe 200 or 300 people I would estimate were there, right? But I want to show you the power of our social media channels. So on YouTube, 419 people watched that video. That's not very much. But on Facebook, more than 10,000 people watched the video. On Instagram, 17,500, and then on Twitter or X, another 11,600, for a total of 39,580 views of that video. About 40% of that were people who don't already follow us, so they see those kinds of things because they follow someone who does follow us. And so my point of that is that just the power of our social media channels and the growth and impact that we're having there that we've seen this year. So when I show you these numbers every month, these are the kinds of things that are behind those numbers. Now, of course, construction stories always get more following than, say, maybe a pre-K event or something like that. But the potential is there for us to be able to reach a huge audience, and that's the point of this report every month, is to show you how much more we're reaching every month. So there's exact numbers on each one of our channels, including our website to show you what our most popular pages are. Just to highlight, our academic calendar is always a popular page, our jobs listing, and our events listing. Those are our top 3 things that we've seen this month. You'll also see the kind of content that we're creating there that we created over the month of January and into February. And remember, January, it was a short month because we had some snow days, we came back from winter break, all those kinds of things. One other project that we're really excited about, and you're going to see this starting in March, is that we have been recruiting what we're calling student influencers from every high school. So at least one student from every high school, including the non-traditional high schools like Holloway, the virtual school, the K-12 school, all those, not just the large high schools is my point. But these students are going to be using a social media platform they have, they can create content about things happening at their schools. They will then submit them to us through that platform. We will review them and edit them and schedule them on our social media channels. So the point is there's 3 of us and there are 52 schools if you count the new school, and we can't be everywhere. So this will help us increase the kind of content we're getting, and it involves some of our best students. These students are students who are recommended by a teacher, but a lot of them are either in Skills USA, Beta Club, Media Club, DECA, FCA, or the National Honor Society, and they're taking classes and pathways for CTE like photography, film production, yearbook, or they're involved in athletics. These are leaders in the various high schools. Some of them are freshmen, there's a couple of seniors, but a lot of them are sophomores or juniors. And then from these, we will choose, our plan is to choose our intern for the summer, which is a paid internship. It's through a grant. We are hoping to choose that person to be our intern this summer based on how these students do, and our plan is to continue to grow this. So I've given you a lot of information. What questions do you have? Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Darby.
Do you know if we've gotten started at all? You and I had talked about doing almost commercial-like things for some of the things our high schools have that are available to the citizens of Rutherford County.
Right. So Dr. Sullivan has asked us to put together a promotional video, which we're working on, that's going to highlight some of the different options and opportunities available, especially in our high schools, you know, the CTE programs and those kinds of things. We want to make about a 5-minute video and then also be able to break that video into smaller pieces that we can really just expand and put and use it for several months. So we are working on that. Yes, ma'am.
Awesome. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
All right. And the reason we're doing this is the work session is just to kind of try to spread it out a little bit because, you know, we all want to go home. So eventually, so that's why we're doing it. But if you guys would rather have this on Thursdays, just let us know and we can always move it back. Okay. Thank you.
Next, we have Rutherford Proud.
Rutherford Proud will be potentially Thursday, but realistically, if we receive precipitation, our kids won't be here to be here Thursday. And talking about Thursday, I think that is just something we will keep up in the air as far as our school board meeting goes. Board policy 1.400 does allow for electronic attendance. And it's for inclement weather or natural disaster, and it says a board member may attend a meeting by electronic means due to inclement weather or natural disaster if the schools in the school district are closed. And so that's just something to keep in mind as we look at Thursday and kind of look to see what it looks like over next. But we'll keep that in mind as we look at what Thursday looks like. So, but again, if we are out of school on Thursday, those groups won't be here on Thursday. And we'll just move to the next one.
No public comment tonight.
Instruction, tab 2 is next, so special course request. Oh yeah, we will need to move G, sorry, stipends.
Yeah.
We have G under
The consent.
consent agenda, and it will need to come under instruction as well. It's under the ESL department's requesting that's on page 6. Naomi Rodriguez, ESL teacher at Rock Springs, to be paid $1,200 from the Title III immigrant grant to reach an ESL parent classes. Ms. Rodriguez is taking the place of a teacher who had resigned, so we'll move that under instruction as well. And then the other part of instruction is our annual special course request. The instruction department's requesting permission to make an application to offer credit for special courses under the following guidelines. Rule 052013.052A, local school systems may offer special courses not listed in 052013.06 on an experimental basis. The Commissioner of Education must approve each course in advance each year. Rutherford County High Schools are requesting approval for the following special course requests, and you'll see all 5 of these are renewal, meaning we have them this year. Anthropology, global diplomacy, Native American history, positive psychology, and then U.S. presidency. So all 5 of those.
And we get students are basically taking these classes now, sometime, not tonight, but whenever.
I can tell you where they're all offered, and there's only one section of each, so it's a small number. Anthropology is currently offered at Central. Global diplomacy is currently offered at Siegel, has previously been offered at Laverne. Native American history has yet to make, but they're hoping it makes this year.
Where at?
Siegel would like to offer it. Positive psychology is currently at Central, and U.S. presidency, we're looking to add at Rockvale and Siegel. And once these get approved, as they're approved currently, these are renewals, but other people in the state can also take advantage of these courses as well. But yes, so we've aligned it to standards, has a syllabi, all this is approved by the state, all same laws still apply, just special courses are electives.
Thank you. Next, we have human resources.
And I mentioned this at our last meeting, but these are 2 additional nurses. Additional school nurse position, request for 1 additional nursing staff due to increasing medical procedures at Riverdale and Rockville High Schools. Health Services Department is requesting 1 new school nurse position. Currently, these two schools share a second school nurse, so this added position will allow both large high schools to have 2 school nurses total.
Any questions? Number 2,
Teach Now and Grow Your Own Clinical Educator Stipend. Rutherford Teach Now and Grow Your Own Apprentice Programs would like to allocate $15,000 of general purpose funds to compensate clinical educators for their support of 98 Rutherford Teach Now candidates and 18 Grow Your Own apprentices. These clinical educators serve as the on-site support team for our aspiring teachers, complete mentor training, meet regularly with their apprentices, and report competency evaluations for program completion. Being assigned a clinical educator is a state requirement of both programs. The state newly requires compensation for clinical educators assigned to support Grow Your Own apprentices. The costs associated with Rutherford Teach Now clinical educator stipends are factored into the tuition and program fees collected from each candidate. And just to give you a number, I mean, that is well over 100 people that we are licensing as teachers ourselves. And so we are definitely one of the larger educator preparatory programs in the state at this point. And so it's pretty phenomenal.
Ms. Maxwell?
yes, Ms. Rosales.
In these Grow Your Own apprentices, what areas are they going into?
Everywhere now, just about.
Everywhere?
612, just about everywhere.
Yes, and special ed, we were discussing that as well, ESL, SPED, math, science, all humanities, foreign language, CTE.
That was my question, to see if there were some that were entering into the hard-to-fill positions, so that's good.
That's where we started. It was in those areas. We just we don't have a way for K-5 yet. And
That's
it
great.
probably will. Yes, unless it's special education, correct.
That's good. Any questions? Okay. Number 3, tenure recommendation.
Yeah, we inadvertently left 1 person off of our tenure list. And so we have an additional individual from Blackman Middle School to add to our tenure list. So
I bet she's glad to see that.
she alerted us to it right away. So we have added her.
Although I did have somebody call me and say, was my name on there? And I was like, yes, it was.
So
Okay. Number 11, legal.
the first one is just continuing with our Board of Distinction program, making sure that we are continually looking at all portions of our annual policy agenda. And then number 2 is transfer student under discipline. The board's been requested to admit a transfer student from another school system under discipline. Student was expelled for possession of marijuana according to policy 6.318. The board may deny admissions of any student except those in state custody when a student transfers from another school system under suspension or expulsion. Director of Schools' recommendation is denied because of capacity issues.
Next, we have policy changes.
And these are the policy adoption second reading of 2 readings. So they were recommended on the first reading on February 6, 2025. So they would go into effect if approved at our meeting on Thursday. Policy changes, the first one, policy 2.808, purchase orders and contracts, adds language of exemptions from purchase order requirements. B, policy 4.603, promotion and retention, adds language regarding requests for retention to be in writing pursuant to State Board of Education regulation. Policy 5.118, background investigations, adds language regarding background checks and FBI wrap-back program for employees and other individuals having proximity to students. Policy 5.500, discrimination, harassment of employees, adds language to align with state and federal law. And then policy 6.204, attendance of non-resident students, clarifies geographical boundary for non-resident students who don't live in Rutherford County.
Any questions, comments? Okay, number 12.
This is a contract agreement between MTSU and Rutherford County Schools. MTSU seeks to be a central magnet school sponsor. And as the board can remember, this kind of comes around for every school, so we're continuing this revolving group of sponsors from MTSU. MTSU proposes a contract in which MTSU may sponsor activities and place advertising at Central Magnet School. MTSU requests permission to place signage, which is detailed in the contract attachment A. MTSU proposes to pay $5,000 per year for 5 years. The contract terms are July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2030.
It's a good investment by MTSU. Why don't they do it for every school?
They do.
They do.
They do.
It's just each one's on a different contract
They're
term.
rotating around, yeah. Since I've been here, they've probably done 7 schools, 7, 8.
They all
Very, yeah. It's a wonderful program, and I'm glad they're doing that. Next, we have resolution, and I said I didn't like resolutions, but I like this one, about chess.
This was proposed by Mr. Tidwell. This is similar to the resolution we did last year, but this is a resolution basically advocating for a chess program to be implemented on a pilot basis by the state. And so this is a resolution saying that whereas research indicates a moderate positive effect of chess instruction on math and overall cognitive ability in primary and middle school students, as well as a smaller yet significant effect on reading achievement, and whereas chess training is linked to the improvement of specific cognitive skills, including critical thinking, problem solving, planning, and memory, which are essential skills for academic success in subjects such as math, science, and language arts. And whereas chess promotes the development of skills that reach beyond the academic setting, including discipline, focus, and perseverance, while these attributes can also support better study habits and overall academic performance. Whereas through teacher training, student engagement, research, collaboration, and community awareness, the integration of chess instruction into student coursework can be expected to produce the following outcomes: improve critical thinking skills among students, enhance conflict resolution abilities, increase interest in scholastic activities, and a positive impact on mathematics achievement. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Rutherford County Board of Education, it requests that the Governor's Office develop and fund a 3-year grant for a pilot program consisting of the following components and funding allocation. Number 1, teacher training and chess materials of $70,000 annually. Number 2, workshops to train teachers in incorporating chess into their lesson plans. 3, resources, curriculum materials, chess sets, and boards for teachers. 4, student engagement events, $5,000 annually. 5, events to foster a sense of community and healthy competition. 6, research and evaluation of $15,000 annually. And 7, collaboration with educational researchers to monitor and evaluate the impact of chess instruction on scholastic achievement. 8, regular assessment of the cognitive and educational benefits of the program. 9, program administration and outreach, which is $10,000 annually. 10, administrative support. Number 11, community outreach and awareness campaigns. Be it further resolved that the Rutherford County Board of Education calls upon state legislators, the Tennessee Department of Education, and other relevant stakeholders to consider these proposals earnestly and act as swiftly to implement these necessary changes. Be it finally resolved that copies of this resolution should be distributed to the governor, state legislators, the Tennessee Department of Education, and other relevant parties. So that's the resolution being proposed for consideration Thursday night.
I want to thank you, Mr. Tidwell, for bringing this. When Rob Mitchell is like the grandfather of this idea, and he started talking to us probably 1.5 years, 2 years ago, and this is just a wonderful program, and I want to thank you, Mr. Tidwell.
Ms. Maxwell?
Yes.
Yeah, so just as you mentioned, and I know you've been a supporter of this as well, Rob Mitchell is really the main brain behind this. I think this was one of the few resolutions that got bipartisan support at the General Assembly last year. So this is just they were kind of getting it off the ground, and I think they had some chess tournaments. Now they're wanting to turn it into, there's some professional development that can happen to incorporate it into teaching and some of the benefits of that. So it's really a pilot program that has some potential, and I've talked to Rob, and he feels like there is some connections there at the governor's office that they may add it into their budget to pilot it and see if it goes anywhere.
And I think we have some grant monies that they've been holding for us that we can use as well. So this is a wonderful thing, and I hope it gets implemented. Thank you, Mr. Tidwell. 14, financial report.
Financial report, will you pull up, I say emailed you. If you'll pull up just real quick. This kind of gets into our next one, but we are working on budgets right now. So we've had most of our individual principal meetings. We had our big principal meeting with our budget overview with them a couple weeks ago. And as he is kind of pulling that up, it gets into our next discussion about bus driver contracts. So I just want to give you guys an overview. Mr. Reed asked me to just kind of put together what the percentages were, and so I sent that to the board on Friday, and contractors and bus drivers have a copy for everybody before we go into the next one, just so everybody can kind of see and be on the same page, and that'll be all that I say. But y'all can pass those around, and then I'll get into general discussion, just so that everybody can see what we are looking at. Across the top, so you basically have 3 columns, and across the top just says current contract, and this is what is in our 141, which are our general purpose school budget. We budget $169,404. This does not include power hour or summer school. This is just general purpose. And so these numbers are strictly based off of that budgeted amount, which we, the last couple years, because of power hour, have had to put a little bit more into. Across the or to the left, you will see the percent raise, and it just has 5, 8, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, and then what our contractors have requested, 34.8. You'll see what that number equates to just for an overall dollar figure. That is the same in the first column, the second column, and the third column, just for pure numbers. Then you'll see beside it 2026, 2027, 2028, and those numbers are based on a 5% across the top and the 3, 10%, which is in the middle, and then 15% at the bottom. The one that is highlighted, I just highlighted that. That is the request of what I think our bus contractors and their attorney have asked for, and I just highlighted what that was. The last column, if you will scroll all the way back up to the top, just shows the total dollar amount, and then all the way to the right, John, sorry. The total increase over 4 years and just what that percent increase is to the budget. This is not a percent increase to a contractor. I'm looking at percent increase towards the overall budget. So I think that's important to just highlight. That is the percent increase to this portion of the budget, and that is just the specifics. So if you see, for example, the very top 5% raise and a 5% increase every year is $5.8 million over 4 years, and a 21.55 increase to the operating budget. If you look at the bottom of that column, it's 34.80, and a 5% raise every year is a $15.2 million increase and a 56% increase to the budget. All the way to the bottom, which is 34.8% raise and a 15% increase every year, is $28,531,000 and 105.01% increase to that line item. And again, these are just numbers of what our budget operation is. Just that is kind of our hinge point of where we are for operations. And we're kind of stuck as far as our central office budgets and our principal budget until we get a little bit further on bus contracting, because that is a large amount of discrepancy of where we are. And so until we get a little bit further, we're kind of stuck. Yes, sir. That is based just strictly on the budgeted amount of private contracts with private owners, however that is worded. Yes, sir. Correct.
Any other questions?
And then I'll get into and I know that'll get into further bus drivers
Yeah, we will.
in a minute, but I just wanted,
Yeah.
that was part of the financial report. But our individual meetings have gone good. I have to give Dr. Chastain an amazing amount of credit. She has had the horrible part of the job that I had 3 years ago, when you have to call all the school principals and tell them I'm taking all these positions from you. We haven't grown this school year, And so we are moving positions all over the place. And so I talked a couple weeks ago about our separation of powers to where Dr. Anthony posts the positions, Dr. Chastain moves the positions, and then I sign the positions, and Dr. Chastain has been moving the positions all over the county. So I appreciate our principals just understanding that's how it works, and she's had to make all those phone calls. So thank you for your work.
Don't envy you.
Our principals are great. They understand. I mean, it's an
Yeah.
overall district that we're working with.
Any other questions? Okay.
And I've got just a couple quick things on directors update.
Yeah, I was going to say, director.
School tomorrow, of course, is closed. Central office will be closed tomorrow as well. Extracurriculars, we will make a decision on extracurricular activities by noon tomorrow. I know that may seem strange. The reason for that is we have 2 district basketball tournaments going on. One we have control over because it's all of our district teams. Smyrna, Stewart's Creek, and Laverne partner up with Lebanon, and Lebanon, as of right now, is still playing. And so they are not making any adjustments. And so if Stewart's Creek, Smyrna, and Laverne, if we were to cancel, then they would have to forfeit games. And so that is not something we ever do, so usually we put parent discretion and they go anyways. It is hard when Stewart's Creek and Smyrna are going to have to drive to Lebanon to play each other. But that is something we are still working with, so if we allow extracurricular activities, it'll be very limited on a case-by-case basis. And then decision about Thursday will be made based on what type of precipitation we actually do. Last one, and this may connect to Mr. Vaught with you. TOSS, the Organization of School Superintendents, had their annual meeting last week, and there was a great legislative panel with Senator White and Representative Haston on the economically disadvantaged portion. And so this is where I think our delegation would get behind. In the governor's proposal, his proposal is a 75% hold harmless on that, which would add back about $1 million. So we this year have seen that decrease of about $2,000. So, or 2,000 students in that economically disadvantaged category. He's, for this year, proposing a 75% hold harmless to that amount, which would increase us to about $1 million. And it would drop down year after year. This must be approved through the General Assembly through appropriations. I think the concern is this is not part of TDOE's proposal, and so something that doesn't have the department's backing sometimes is a challenge to get through the General Assembly. So we are hoping that Representative Haston and Senator White are going to support this, so I may ask some of y'all that have good relationships and I'll reach out to them as well to say this is something I know Dr. Duke did with Murfreesboro City as well, that this is something we absolutely support and will be very helpful to. But not having TDOE support is a little
challenging.
Is a challenge. And then it is Bus Driver Appreciation Day Saturday, I think. I have been Googling it. Because if you Google it, it says it is April 22nd or February 22nd. North Carolina governor did a proclamation for February 22nd, but Google says it is April 22nd. So whichever one it is, we will thank you twice. Thank you, and I'm sorry that we have to have contract negotiations next. But thank you for your service for that. And we'll thank you both times officially with our social media channels and all that too. And if you find out officially which one it is in Tennessee, please let me know. So that's all I've got.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Vaught, are you going to have anything for us on Thursday, or?
Yes, I will make my rounds Thursday. I was down there last Wednesday all day, pretty much all day, making the rounds for our delegation. The general consensus was, and I hate to laugh about this, it's true, I think they were all tired of going out the previous week, which was voucher vote and the support for East Tennessee, and they were all just catching their breath last week, I think, when we were there. But I have talked to a couple of individuals this week, and I think they're settling in, and probably maybe they'll read this Thursday night, 2 weeks of what's going on. I think your meeting last Friday was productive, as best I can tell, other than statement about being on board. But anyway, we do have some sympathetic, I will say that, very sympathetic.
Any general discussion? Yes, Mr.
I got a couple of things. I'd like to make a recommendation, Mr. Evans, is there any way we could add bus driver appreciation to the staff appreciation group? Is that possible?
So the awards that, are you talking about the awards that we do once a month?
Yes.
Transportation is one of the categories, and so parents or employees or anyone can nominate anyone who's involved in the transportation function. That could be a school crossing guard, it could be a contractor, it could be a driver. We've so far had a variety of those. We are recognizing a bus, assuming that the meeting still goes as normal Thursday, one of the 4 that we are recognizing is a bus driver and contractor.
Good. Second thing, I read an article where Rutherford County Schools was one of 3 county school systems in the state that's been recognized nationally because of the performance gains since COVID. And, we know we've got the best school system, but, this is another great honor that our teachers and all have because, you get recognized at that level, that's pretty good. Says a lot.
Yeah. Anything else?
Move to adjourn.
Okay, thank you. We're going to take a 10-minute break and then come back at 6:45, almost 10 minutes. Is that okay?